So I'm here with Justin and Rob of Restoration Games. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good thing.
Yeah, doing great.
Excellent. So tell me a little about Restoration Games and what you guys are doing and what you guys have set out to do with this company.
Sure. It was sort of a kooky idea I had almost exactly. Well, the idea started more than a year ago, but I approached Rob about a year ago. I think right around a year ago now.
Yep.
And I just had this idea. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I've done some self-publishing and role-playing games, and I've dabbled in game design and things like that. But I always wanted to do like a big licensed game. And, I didn't have the resources or anything to do that. But it was something I was interested in. And I sort of figured out a cheat, if you will, to maybe take an old game, strip out some parts of it that wouldn't be viable, I guess, and then bring it back. And the original game I had the idea was Star Wars Queen's Gambit. And I had known Rob prior to this. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I actually helped Rob out a few times with some legal issues, and nothing criminal.
Yeah, that makes it sound sinister. It was contracts. Just contracts.
Right.
Got me out of a jam.
And obviously we didn't end up doing Queen's Gambit for a variety of reasons, but the kernel of the idea was there. And then we started talking about some of these other old games that we remembered as kids and things we liked. And I know there was a game Rob talked about that he actually sort of already had ideas about redoing and things like that. And it was sort of went from there. And so that's where it came about.
So Justin, you were a lawyer previously. So what made you kind of change from the lawyer side of things to wanting to do this full time?
Well, I've always been a gamer too. Long before I was a lawyer, I was a gamer. Even as a kid, we played games all the time. And like I said, right around when D20 came out, third edition, they had the license. I did some self-publishing, and that sort of, just was always on the back burner. And then as a lawyer and being involved in gaming, I started getting a few gaming clients, game-related clients here and there, and doing pro bono stuff, helping out small companies with drafting contracts or reviewing contracts for freelancers and things like that. And really, it just came down to wanting to do something that was more fulfilling. Being a lawyer, I did it for 20 years. I'm still a lawyer, obviously, but this is my focus now. But I wouldn't say I got burned out on it per se, so much as I wanted the new challenge, and it was something that was exciting. And like I said, it's something that I've always had a passion for. So.
Excellent. So, Rob, a lot of people know your name from a lot of high-profile games. Let our audience know kind of your background and how you got into this.
I've been a game designer professionally for 18 and a half years now, since 1998. I was with Hasbro for about 14 years. So if you have played any classic casual games, I have done some version. I've done Monopoly and stuff on Scrabble and Clue and a lot of things on Risk and Trivial Pursuit. And then in 2012, I left Hasbro. They had moved my job 90 miles away from like my family and my kids and things like that. And, I tried to make it work a little bit and commuting, and it didn't work out. So I kind of set out on my own. And I was at Gen Con with my wife, and she went off to a seminar from this lawyer who was talking about contracts and how to set out and freelance. And it was Justin. So he became sort of my part-time lawyer contract advice, what he was saying before. And that's how this sort of came together about a year ago.
That's excellent. Now, do you all have a target audience for some of the games that you guys are going to be putting out, some of the games that you're going to be restoring?
Well, I think we have, I wouldn't say we have a target audience, but one of the sort of type of person that we knew would be interested in this type of thing are people of our age who remembers the games from when they were kids and maybe have kids of their own now. I have a 10-year-old. She would be very upset if I referred to her as a 9-year-old. She just had her birthday. A 10-year-old and an 11-year-old that I love to play games with, and it's sort of cool saying, "Hey, I played this game when I was a kid," and so I think that's certainly like a sort of a sweet spot for us. But in restoring the games and making them just good games and on their own right, I think we can certainly be attractive to just regular modern day gamers, people who like to play fun games.
Excellent. Now, what's been the biggest challenge for restoring games that are sometimes decades old? Because mechanics change, there's newer ways to do things, there's newer lines of thinking. What's been the biggest challenge for going back and taking some of these games and updating their mechanics?
There are challenges, but this was a lot of what I was doing at Hasbro over the years, which is partly, I think, why Justin reached out to me. Like, they would say, here's a Clue game, put Harry Potter on it, or here's a Game of Life, but no one's really done anything for 10 years. Can you kind of update it? So I'm very comfortable with that. A lot of times it's just looking at the game and saying, well, what's the fun part that the game's trying to do? So for Stop Thief, one of the games we're trying to do, it's listening to the clues and figure out where the thief is and then get there in time. And so how that was executed in 1979 was just different. And so how can we execute it now? So there are challenges, and with our games, all of our games that we're doing this first year, we made mistakes. We said this is going to be great, and it wasn't. Or we overcomplicated it, or we changed too much, or we just get caught up in design and decided to make it a game it wasn't. So you still go through the natural struggles as with any game design, which is figuring out how to do just enough. But the process itself was pretty comfortable and straightforward, and actually, to me, a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, in some ways, it's a little bit easier. Obviously, you're starting with a fully formed game design that you're working from, so you don't need to stare at the blank page so much. That can be challenging sometimes. And then one of the challenges that we have that you wouldn't have with a regular design is part of it is meeting expectations for the fans of the original game. If you're changing anything, if you change even 1% of that game, there's someone out there who that's the most important 1% for them. And they're going to be very upset that you changed that 1%. So we obviously, I think in the end, that person's going to be satisfied with what we're doing, but you always find there, whatever you've changed, there's some, we're running the Kickstarter now, obviously through April 11th for Stop Thief. And one of the things we sort of took out fairly immediately was in Stop Thief, you trying to track down the thief on the board, and you get to him and you make the arrest, and you got the right space. And in the original game, as you know, every once in a while he gets away anyway.
Oh, God.
His little nanny nanny boo boo song, and he runs away. And we thought that was, in many ways, I feel like they did that just to make the game artificially longer, because I feel like longer games were expected back then. So we sort of took that out pretty early on, and we've actually had more than one person say, "Oh, you got to bring that back." Really?
Yeah. When that would happen to me, when that situation would come up for me, it was terrible. But every time it came up for somebody else, I was like, "Yes, thank you. That's so good." The thief ran away, and it was like a percentage of the time that it happened. But I was so glad when it happened to other people because it gave me another chance. So.
Yeah, that's not really going to be in our version. Well, it'll be in the classic version, right? We can put that in there.
Yeah. So let's talk about Stop Thief. So Stop Thief is one of my favorite games. I've still got my parents' original version of Stop Thief, the electronic cops and robbers game from '79. It's still intact. Still have the wonderfully large cell phone looking.
You could kill someone with that.
I know, really. Smack him right upside the head. So unfortunately, I couldn't get a battery that worked in this thing. So
really,
I can't. Yeah. Well, I think all of our 9 volts are dead in the house, except for the one in the smoke detector. So I wasn't going to pull that one for this. So tell us a little about Stop Thief. This is going to be your first title as a company putting it out and recreating this. Tell us why it was a good choice to remake this one.
You want to take that one, Rob? Or you want me?
Yeah, I mean, I can take it. I mean, we put out a poll to people when we announced this idea last year at Gen Con, and we had some ideas for games, but we really wanted the general public to weigh in. Now, sometimes they would suggest things that were unfeasible, or the rights weren't available, or it was already in print from some other publisher. But one game that came up fairly often, I was certainly in the top 10, maybe even the top 5, was Stop Thief. And it sort of hit all the right check boxes for us in the sense that it was well known, it's accessible, it had a great idea, but felt like it could be modernized, right? The way dice work, the way the cards move, the thief running away were all things that just didn't fit 30, almost 40 years later. And so if I had played it, it'd been so long that effectively I hadn't played it. My family didn't have it, so it would have been at a friend's house. So I took it out and I bought it on eBay and I started playing it. And I just thought, well, this is a fun game. I mean, I want to change this. I want to change this. And Justin's like, yeah, we're going to change this. And I remember you had come up, Justin. We don't live near each other. And we were driving in the car on the way back to the airport. And I was kind of like, oh, man, how do we change this? And then you said something and then I said something. And within 5 minutes, we had figured out how to modernize it. We just knew it was a good fit at that point.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that also in particular is the electronic device. So, I mean, if you think about it, obviously electronics have come quite a long way since 1979. And we knew, it seems sort of obvious now to just sort of replace that with a free companion app for a smart device. And there are obviously games out there doing that now anyway. You've got games like XCOM and things like that that are using these companion apps. And so it's obviously a natural fit and gives us a lot of advantages that you wouldn't have in a dedicated electronic device.
So one of the decisions was to move away from rolling dice and moving your player. In the original game, you had these little plastic figures that you moved around the board in these spaces, and you would roll dice. And I remember after playing many modern board games, and then going back to this a couple months ago and teaching some friends how to play, I remember rolling the dice and somebody just getting some really crap rolls and sitting there saying, I can't even move. I can't even get through the doorway. So how was it? How are you guys handling removing the dice from the game?
Well, we knew that had to go. It's funny. It's one of those things. It was sort of it was innovative for the time when it first came out, but we've gotten better at designing games like we have with everything else. We've gotten better at designing washing machines and cars and pens and all kinds of things. So it's no surprise that we've gotten better as a society in designing games. And one of the things we realized is roll and move has a big problem. If you roll crappy, you're going to have a bad night. And so we took the luck out of it by turning it into these decks of movement cards with sort of prearranged arrays of numbers, different distributions and things like that. And so not only do we get rid of the pure randomness of the roll and move, but that also gave us the opportunity to now take those movement decks and make them asymmetrical and give each player a different way to play, a different feeling. We took the sleuth cards from the original game that had all these random effects, including all the ones that we sort of frown upon these days in modern gaming, like lose a turn, go back to start, all that stuff, right? So we took out the bad ones and we took the good ones and we merged them into the movement cards and then made them asymmetrical between all the players. And it just sort of tightened everything up, made it all more efficient and better play experience.
So you guys are now using, instead of the crime scanner, instead of putting this big clunky machine in the box, you guys are using a companion app. What can people expect from the companion app? And I know recently through Kickstarter, different modes have been unlocked. Tell us a little about what that's going to bring.
Yeah, well, we put the companion app in because that's just a lot of plastic and electronics and integrated circuit boards and sort of a kind of a waste of resources. And we've reached the point where we can feel that at least one person at the table will have a smartphone. and it saves us from basically sending solder and wires and batteries in every box. But the upside is with a companion app and with a smartphone is we can be updating it on a regular basis. If you make a mistake when coding a piece of electronics and plastic and then you ship it, that mistake's forever, as opposed to a companion app. You're like, sorry, and then you tweak it. But even outside of the simple, fixing errors, what a companion app does allows us to do new modes, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, come up with a new way to play. And so through our Kickstarter, we have unlocked three or four new modes, 4 modes, 3 new modes since we started. Right. The game was going to ship with our version of the standard mode. So the thief doesn't run away, and basically it's almost identical to the classic game with just a few tweaks, like the thief doesn't run away. And then you can pick classic mode, which not only does the thief perform exactly how he did in 1979, but it'll have the original sounds. So
yeah,
or
ridiculous.
We'll recreate it. Yeah, if you love 2-bit sounds, then we'll put both bits in there for you.
We spare no bit.
Yeah, and then we unlocked an advanced mode where the thief is very, very tricky, and we're play testing that now to make sure that it's challenging but not impossible. And then we unlocked kind of a mode in between, which is intermediate. So you've got the thief in standard mode, and you can play it with your kids. You can play it casually, but if you get good at it and people can suss it out right away, you can step up to intermediate. You can step up to advanced. And do we have a new goal up right now?
We're just probably 1 or 2 days away at the rate we've been going to unlocking co-op and solo versions. So excellent. Having this app is so versatile. Lets us put all these different types of games in the same box with no additional cost to the customer. I mean, this thing's on Kickstarter for $29, and for that you get a game you can play with your kids, pretty young kids, I feel like. Depends on the kid, of course. And just casual, beer and pretzels type game. And then you've got, if your gamers come over and you want to play hardcore, you can do that with this game, and it is pretty hardcore, and based on initial testing. And then, or you can play co-op, or you can play solo. No one's coming over tonight, but I'm gonna try and catch those thieves myself. So we can put all that in one box. It's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. So now people have gotten a chance to play this. You guys brought some print and play copies to Gamma this past week. How have people received the game? I know we actually were part of the play test. We actually were part of the print and play test when you guys first started. So we checked it out. So how have people been receiving this, and how's it gone over with gamers as you've sat there and played with them?
I wasn't at Gamma, so I'm going to throw this over to Justin.
Well, I'll say I'm constantly everyone loves it. I'm still waiting for someone to say something negative. I'm sure they will at some point.
Oh, they will. They will.
Yeah. Gamma was great. We demoed it for BGG TV and Dice Tower live stream. They all thought it was great. The feedback comments we got, everyone thinks it looks great. I've also had an opportunity to demo it at my local game store, which happens to be a cool stuff. I just recently, this past weekend, I actually demoed the intermediate mode, which we're trying out with Jason Levine of the Dice Tower and a couple other guys, serious gamers, and they were like, "Oh man!" Then they literally backed the Kickstarter while we were playing the game. So it's gone over really well. Cool. I probably always a good time to mention. I can't mention them enough. The other members of the team, Jason Taylor, our graphic designer, Rob's wife Lindsay, Daviau, production designer, I think is the title she's going by. But they both are. It's like our two-headed design ettin, or just really killed it. The game looks amazing. Lindsay did these really cool. So you mentioned the miniatures before. They're all the same figure, just different colors, and it's sort of a dated looking figure, which is cool for the time. But to sort of modernize it, we actually went with meeples, and then what we did is we silk screened. There's this decorative, design onto each of them, which matches the design on their license, the distinguishing features on their license. And Lindsay designed the meeples and all that stuff, and they look amazing. So it's really coming along really, really nicely. Very happy with it.
That's excellent. I'm super excited about getting this in my hands and getting a chance to play with my kids. This is a game that when my wife and I actually first got married, I bust out this game. I was like, Aaron, this is my game. This is the thing that I remember from my childhood that I loved. It was this and Sequence. My grandmother taught me Sequence. And so like those two games stand out big time in my mind from my childhood. And so, yeah, we played this when we first got married, and so introduced it to her, and then I haven't busted it out in a couple years, and so I brought it out back last year sometime, and then when you guys announced that this was one of the options, I got so excited. I was one of the people who voted for Stop Thief as my first choice. So I'm excited about this, and you guys definitely, if you have not seen the Kickstarter, we're going to put a link in the bottom of this interview and on the website. So you guys check out the Stop Thief Kickstarter. Make sure you support it because this is a game that you want to see restored. So you guys, what does the future hold for restoration games? And I guess throughout this year, what are you guys looking at doing?
We got two other games. Stop Thief is sort of our most visible project. It's on Kickstarter, but we're really going to have 3 games out at the same time at Gen Con this year. So end of August, and it'll be in stores right around the same time, maybe the beginning of September. So we have Stop Thief, and then we have a racing game called Downforce, and that's our name. This is one of the games where we changed the name, but kept the gameplay pretty close to the, I don't want to say the original because it's been published a few times. Wolfgang Kramer, classic German game designer, had a series of racing games in the 1990s, most notably known as Top Race, but it was also known, Hasbro did a version, Daytona 500. Justin, are there any other names that it went?
There's the
Cleveland Detroit Grand Prix
is a popular one, and the first one was Formel 1, the German one. Yeah.
So,
but it's funny. If you go on Board Game Geek and look for like re-implements, whatever, and there's like 8 versions of it. Every single version of it is rated like 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5 or higher. Every single version is highly rated. It was a wealth of riches to sort of go through and pick out what parts of the games we were gonna, of all these different games, and pick the parts that we like the best and fit the game.
Yeah, so we licensed that from Wolfgang. I was at the Essen Game Fair in Germany last October and had a meeting with him, and was like, I'm pretty chill normally, but I was super nervous to sit down and talk with this guy and like talk about licensing his game. But I had played Daytona 500 both by myself when I was starting out 18 years ago, and then with my kids when they were very little. They're teenagers now, and so we played it. So I had a emotional attachment to this game, or one version of it. So it meant a lot to be able to bring it back. So we will have that that in our line. It's a very casual racing game. Like if you are a racing aficionado and are looking for a racing simulation, this isn't it. If you want to play a car-driven game where you want your car to get around the car faster than other people, this is your game. Takes about half an hour to play, maybe, if tops 25 minutes.
2 to 6, and that obviously has a good bearing on the length of the game. And then there's 2 different tracks. It has this gorgeous 6-fold double-sided board with 2 totally different tracks. One is a sort of a classic track similar to the one in Top Race, and then the other one's this, as I call it, it's the Frankenstein track that Rob put together from all the nasty bits of every other track you can find. So it's a lot more cutthroat than the other one.
It's not that, it's the sausage of tracks is what I like to think. I made use of the whole game board.
The other thing Rob did, which I think is the really the best part of the restoration for Downforce, is the game has is sort of these three parts. There's the auction part at the beginning where you're auctioning off the cars, and it used to be sort of this big convoluted auction with all kinds of detailed rules and things like that. And Rob found a way to just streamline it to its bare essence, where you still have the auction mechanic, but you're getting to the game like twice as fast, which that's the best part of the game, is when you're playing the cards and racing around the track. So I thought that part was really neat.
That's really cool.
So yeah, we have that one coming out, and then our last game, way up there. Actually, you can see Stop Thief Daytona 500 and Dragon Master are all on my bookshelf. Dragon Master was a card game that Milton Bradley put out in about 1981-82, when everything had to be a dungeon and or a dragon. And so I was a super nerd, still am, but at the time I had fallen in love with Dungeons and Dragons, so I got it as a gift. And it was a trick-taking game. It was my first trick-taking game, and I just always thought it was so cool, from the oversized cards to the theme to being a slightly different trick-taking game. So pretty early on when we were talking, we looked at that.
Gems too.
Yeah, you got interlocking gems, and there was a bag, and it actually got me my job at Hasbro, because in my interview I mentioned how much I liked it, and the guy I was interviewing with had designed it, which I didn't know. Just luck.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
So that was a little bit of a personal one to bring back, and it's our I want to say little card game, but we put a lot in the box for $20. I mean, it's cards. It's got some cool gems. It's got a ring, like an actual ring with a gemstone in it that's in there. And
nice. And people can expect these in 2017.
They'll be all available this fall, late summer to fall.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
that's great.
And looking forward, we can't. We're still finalizing some stuff. I literally just signed a contract at Gamma Trade Show that I've been working on for 6 months or more. So that's a small little game, but it's one I'm excited about.
That's really cool.
We've got other games that we're sort of just working on, and then each of these games is different, trying to get them ready to a position where we get everything squared away and we can actually start the restoration process. So, but we have a short list that we're working on from a bunch of different games, and then we narrow that down, and we'll be on Dice Tower Live show again this year at Gen Con. And we're planning on making at least one or two pretty big announcements then. So that would be the place to stay tuned for sort of the details for the big ticket items for next year.
Excellent. Well, we'll be watching and looking forward to it. I know when I heard that you guys when you guys were on Dice Tower Live at Gen Con last year, when I heard about this, immediately I had to write a blog post about it for One Board Family. And in fact, it's funny because I posted it at the time, and then I think probably in November we started getting a ton of traction on that post just out of nowhere. And so I was happy to see that people were getting to know that you guys are out there. You guys are restoring games and bringing back some great memories for gamers. So thank you guys so much for what you're doing. Thank you for bringing back one of my favorite games, and looking forward to playing Stop Thief this fall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.